Welcome to the Visual Cast, coming at you from California. I'm your host, Alon Hammer, aka Ram. The Visual Cast is a hybrid podcast where we sit down with some of the best, most interesting, and most exciting visual artists from all over the world. We chat about life, art, visuals, software, hardware, systems, spirituality. It's basically a massive nerd out. But the guests also get to do a set where we dive into their computer and get an up-and-close look at how they make art, how they perform art, or really anything they want to share with us. Episode 11 is with the amazing and powerful PapaBear, aka Jesse Yaun. Jesse is just coming off of playing an absolutely outstanding set at Rendezvous in Suwannee, Florida, and he ain't slowing down. He is an exceptional visual artist and plays some of the biggest events in the country. He makes insanely cool clothes and swag, and his style of abstract generative real-time visuals is close and dear to my heart. Sitting down with him was a real pleasure. We talk about Jesse's journey from inking and product branding design to starting to do live painting at shows. We talk about him mixing his art in After Effects, AAVJ, RayTK, and of course the mighty TouchDesigner. We then get into the emotional impact of abstract art and his goal of creating memorable moments for people. For Papa's set, he blesses us with a killer audiovisual set with audio by Widge, all real-time, all generative, all running in TouchDesigner, powered by AAVJ. We then jump into how the bear makes his visual magic and get a look into his RayTK workflow. Getting to see and experience a PapaBear set is nothing less than magic, and we are thrilled he took the time to sit with us. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with anybody you think will enjoy this convo and showcase. And without any further ado, here's the Visual Cast.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride.
Exceptionally nice and beautiful human being. I'm very lucky to have him on the podcast, and I'm really excited to talk to him. So, welcome to the podcast, Jesse.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you for having me on.
You're here. Hell yeah. Took us a little while. This is the common theme for all the episodes is the people that are supposed to do audio visual cannot set up audio visual.
Not at all.
I just don't get it. So
you think we know how to do that, right?
Oh my gosh. Well, let's jump right into it.
Yep.
So Jesse, you're an exceptional, super positive, high vibrational being. Your art instantly invokes good vibes. You've performed on some of the biggest stages for some of the biggest artists out there, created branding and logos and album art. You're a master of your tools and constantly learning, growing, and perfecting and trying out new and innovative ways to create visuals. So my first question is, what does it feel like knowing that your creations have such a positive impact on people?
Oh, wow. Way to start it off. Wow. What a hell of a first question. I think that that's one of the things that I've kind of accepted recently is that as I have been inspired by so many in the past, I am also sparking inspiration in others. And honestly, it's what I'm living for right now. I love inspiring the person next to me to truly create something original on their own as they see I've been inspired in creating original content on my own. And honestly, one of the most beautiful things to see is hearing someone come up to you and say, hey, you inspired me to get into visuals, because I've said that to so many people along the way. It's beautiful.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. It was lovely meeting you, I guess almost not a year ago, but a little while ago.
Yeah, last year.
Yeah, it was great meeting you. Wasn't the best time for me personally or for a lot of people in the world, but it was awesome to meet you and get to, I've been following you for a while. kind of like, not following your career per se, but I've kind of known about you and heard about you and always heard such nice things about you. And then to meet you and get like the affirmation that all those things are true was really nice.
You will.
What was it like growing up in Georgia? Do you have a lot of family still there? Like, do you go visit there often?
Yeah, so grew up in outside Atlanta, in Marietta, Georgia, for the first 17 years or so before I moved down to the city. But my dad still lives down there with my stepmom, just
Nice.
outside Atlanta. So I'm down there often, and I have plenty of friends. That's where my roots are as far as kind of getting into the scene and getting involved. So Atlanta always has a special heart, a place in my heart. As much as I am planted in Asheville, it's like Atlanta's always on my mind, and the people that push me to be who I am from there.
Beautiful. Yeah. Tell us about that. What was you draw, right? You're kind of like originally a drawer, or are you a painter? Do you
Yeah.
paint at all?
So starting out, just kind of brief history. I started doing digital art in about 7th grade. I started dabbling around in Photoshop, making.
Oh,
I was in a Halo 2 forum back in the day when I was playing video games.
Halo
And
2
a big
forum.
thing was the signatures at the bottom of the posts.
Ah,
It was just like everyone wanted to have the coolest little signature with like
yeah, for
Master
sure.
Chief in the corner. And I
Course.
really wanted to learn how to do that. So I joined a subsection of the forum, kind of devoted to teaching people graphic design. And from there, it
In the
quickly
Halo
turned
2 forum?
in the Halo 2 forum.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
So I started
so
getting actually paid to make signatures for people in the forums. And at the time, it wasn't much. It was like, whatever, $20 or something like that. But, I'd go and spend that on video games or whatever. And then, just from there, went into Flash video. I loved all the stuff in like E-Bombs World, Newground back in the day. So I was like,
Hell yeah.
I had a website called AmishApe.tk that I put all my little Flash animations on, but kind of did my high school thing. Didn't really do too much graphic design other than yearbook, and then from there, kind of I went to college for printmaking at Georgia College in Millersville, Georgia, and then after that, I just got really involved in the electronic scene and started seeing people at shows bringing out their merch, live painting, and that's when I really got into that. I got into ink illustration, live painting, and most of all merchandise design, designing
Interesting.
clothes, starting to partner with companies, DJs, bands, whatever I could do, while I was working my full-time job at an embroidery shop.
Wow.
Yeah,
So Jesse,
so
you didn't start off drawing. You started off digital and then went to drawing.
yes, yeah, pretty
That's
much.
so interesting. It's fascinating.
I had drawn my whole life, but definitely the digital age was kind of growing, and I went to digital, and then I picked up a sketchbook one day, and I fell in love with inking down solid line work.
Mm.
The permanence of it, being really conscious about how you lay down ink and in what manner kind of makes you think out the process a little bit more of creation. So drawing became really fun to me. I brought my sketchbook everywhere I went, and I still have a passion for it. It's just I'm very ADD about my focuses, and partially why I have done so much is my hyper fixation on certain things at certain times. And then it's like, all right, I got that, let me move on to something else.
I love that. I love it. It's almost like you're looking for things that excite you, and then they excite you, and then you're like, okay, I need to be excited by something new now, so I'll find something else to excite me. That's a very akin to like the right brain kind of creative mindset of like you need to create, you need to make things, you need to do things, and then when you do them, you're like, hey, well, what else can I do? What else can I use this brain power for? What else can I use this part of my mind for?
Yeah.
I really love that. So okay, so when you said you were drawing when you were a kid, was there anybody in your life that kind of like inspired you to draw? Was somebody in your family that's an artist? Like, what was the, besides for being a nerd like all of us and playing Halo, shout out Red versus Blue.
Oh man, all day.
I love that shit. I was just thinking about it the other day, how fun that was. It was so stupid. That machinima
the days
stuff.
of machinima. Yeah.
I love it.
As far as inspiration goes, I attribute to this day 100% my dad. I inherited the creative genes from him 100%. He was awesome. He was a painter, photographer. I've always been obsessed with the term Renaissance man. He really kind of put me onto that. He not studied, but had a bunch of books on Da Vinci. And I would just sit there for hours, just kind of like scrolling through those. And he would invite me out to, we called it the art room. It was a dark room essentially, but it was in our garage, just a doored off room that he would go and paint in there. And he'd invite me out there. I didn't know how to paint, but I was just kind of imitating what he did. And just throughout the years, I knew I wanted to be an artist. I found something, a book that I had written in second grade or whatever. It was kind of like a fill in the blank sort of thing. And then they would type it up and give it to your parents for like a present for, Father's or Mother's Day or whatever. And it said in the dedication, I'm Jesse Yaun, and when I grow up, I want to be a graphic designer. And I had no idea what a graphic designer exactly was at the time. In second grade. Wow. But then I looked at my third grade book that I said, and it kind of became more generic, and it said, I'm Jesse Yaun. When I grow up, I want to be an artist. And I've cried looking at that so many different times, thinking about manifesting that as a little kid to where I'm at now.
That's beautiful, dude. I'm getting a little goosebumps here.
I'm sorry.
That's really nice. Does your dad, is he an artist? Like, is he besides for being a creative and very focused, is he an artist as well?
So it's always been his kind of side passion. He's definitely more on the creative force as far as marketing. He's very strategic with that. He's retired now, but nice. He definitely pushed me from the get-go to just create. And even when I wanted to make the leap to full-time artist, after working at the embroidery shop, I kind of just mentioned it to him, and hearing his response, hell yeah, that was all the affirmation I needed, like, to make the leap. So besides so nice. Having the confidence in myself, having the creative push from my dad is absolutely attributed to where I'm at today.
Hell yeah, dude. That's so nice. That makes me feel good as a father, like, always thinking about those kind of things of like, what's my little boy going to do? Is he going to be doing that and that? And then it's like, I'm always reminded that it doesn't really matter as long as I just affirm him and, say yes. Hell yeah. Yes.
Positive reincouragement. That's a reinforcement.
Positive reinforcement. Definitely the best way to be parents. Cool. So I totally didn't get that you kind of, because I look at your career a little bit and I'm like, okay, you kind of transitioned from live painting and then you started doing more like classic, digital art, and then you started doing more animation, and then you started doing more real time, and it's kind of this awesome, evolutionary trajectory. But you totally threw it off now with the fact that you started off as a graphic designer. No, I'm totally joking. But what was kind of like, besides for, being into, this kind of like graphic design and Photoshop and stuff, what was the real push for you to kind of wanted to go into more digital craft? Like, because Photoshop is Photoshop, but then there's also like digital painting, digital sculpting. Was there like a shift from your graphic design to a more, classical art approach per se?
I'm not really sure what took the shift. I think I just the fascination of seeing people creating live at music events just really kind of wanted me to kind of start bringing my art with me around. And that's, like I said, I just started bringing my sketchbook places, and then kind of developed into a friend suggesting, hey, like, why don't you paint? And I'm like, hey, I've never really thought about that. I don't think I'd be any good. And so I just started drawing my, goofy caricatures of cartoon characters on screen, or on sketchbook paper, and then kind of sketching that out and putting it on canvas, and then kind of filling in, my black and white line work with that.
Yeah, so you would bring your sketchbook places, and kind of somebody said, hey, maybe you should try painting. And was that kind of what led you into live painting, like at shows and stuff like that?
Yeah, so a lot of the Atlanta promoters I became friends with, just, from going to shows. And eventually I kind of started getting invited out. So it became a more frequent thing. And I won't mention the artist's name that started bringing me on, but he who shall not be named started bringing out live painters to his events.
Okay.
And that was kind of,
I got you. I didn't get the reference. I got you.
A lot of people will understand that, but I'm not giving him my energy of saying his name.
Copy.
That community started bringing out live painters to events, and that became just a frequent thing of me doing that, and then eventually starting to get paid for going out to events
for live painting.
Yeah, and it was usually just like a +1 and right. a ticket, but I could use that to cover my travel expenses.
Yeah.
But
and also it gives you the affirmation of like, oh, I'm getting paid for my art. I'm getting some sort of return besides for the feeling good about it. You're getting some sort of, return that's some sort of monetary return. It's very important, I think, for young artists, and like you said, it's not even about how much it is or how valuable. It's more of like something. So you feel like, oh, I'm working now.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it's still, that's one of the frustrations I faced was, trying to get paid to come out to events as a painter. Still to this day, it's like I have so much respect for all of my friends that are in that craft, like still pursuing that, because it is a constant struggle. You're going to events really hoping that you sell either the piece you're working on, the piece you brought with you, or merchandise that you have, whether it be prints, t-shirts, whatever the case is. But it really is a struggle, and I think as an artist, that's one of the biggest things that we struggle with is getting what we're worth.
Totally. It's a constant struggle, and it lies in, it doesn't only lie in us, and I hate putting always the blame on the producers and the event throwers, but it's like a lot of it is that, a lot, and I'm not saying that all event producers are like this. I think a lot of them have the understanding of the importance of it, but a lot of times their job is to maximize things for lower profit. What was the first thing that you drew as a kid or as a young adult, or even at, kind of when you were going into the scene, that made you feel like, oh, I can do this as a career? You were making these Photoshop things and kind of like playing, but that was probably more of like a game and more of like, excitement. What was like the first thing that you really did and you're like, oh, wait, I'm actually good at this?
I don't know really when it hit. I think that when I started making, wearable clothing and partnering with people making merchandise, it kind of turned it into more of an idea just from doodling into, man, maybe I can make like, things that people are able to use as well as appreciate. So, transitioning into t-shirts and hoodies, it kind of became a way of, hey, maybe I can make this work more than just selling a doodle at a time or a painting at a time. It kind of allowed me a way to put my art on different things and see more of a result of it.
Interesting. Okay, I'm kind of going all over the place here. Sorry about this.
You're fine.
But your transition from, so you're in the live drawing scene, you're in the live art scene, you know all the promoters, you're kind of getting connected with them. What was the transition, or what was the catalyst to go from that into doing visuals? Or I should say even before visuals, into digital art?
Yeah. I think that, it was one of those things that just wanted to expand my horizons out. I started seeing, visuals become a little bit more of a prevalent thing. I don't think that I had quite been inspired by the tipper community by that point. I don't think, but that's one of the biggest attributing factors, is that scene in particular, and just concert visuals leading up to when I first experienced that. That being a involved part of the show really kind of gave me a push towards learning digital art more. It first just started just remixing my own art in After Effects, and I wanted to see my art move. That's bottom line what it came down to.
Gotcha.
Is I wanted to see my doodles move in different ways, melt. Just because that's another way to utilize my art, and that became my push into creating. And big push towards that from seeing friends like I attribute my friend Brandon Hutchins, Sacramento Studios. I lived with him for a good bit. He VJ'd, and I would just constantly feed him content, and just little videos I was making, and then I'd go to shows seeing him VJ my art up there, and it eventually just reached a point where I was like, wow, like this is cool. He's killing it. I want to do this in my own way. I want to interpret, and use my own art, and use, my friends' art, and put on my friends by playing their work along with mine.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like a lot of people have this similar story. Obviously, like going to shows, seeing kind of like the scene, seeing it grow, and a lot of it's very interesting because a lot of VJs, or I should say visual artists, they started by giving their clips to VJs, right? And then they're like, wait a second, I want to be doing this for my own stuff. It's such a I love that progression, because it's like it really shows like the trajectory of motivation and like inspiration. It's like, okay, I'm motivated to make this because I want to see my art move, and now I'm seeing it move. But now I'm seeing it on a big screen, and it's like, okay, but I'm continuing to make stuff. I just love it. I think it's like a really, it's an awesome journey. It's an awesome journey.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you started making animations. You started VJing. I know you're a very big Cinema 4D user, Octane render user. What kind of shifted you into real time? Like, when did you make the jump into TouchDesigner and this kind of world of real time visuals?
Yeah, so I had been doing Cinema 4D, Octane. That was my bread and butter for a good couple years there. And you can get a really polished look with Octane and Cinema 4D's user interface. I tried out Blender. Obviously Houdini is a little intimidating, so that was not where I was going to start. So Cinema 4D is kind of what I chose. And, at a certain point, I not reached like a plateau of creation with it, but I think that not seeing the results quick enough, really, I'm it sucks to say, I love instant gratification, like a lot of people do, but seeing the result of your creation and the parameters you're changing instantly, rather than having to render something out overnight for a 30-second clip and then hope that your lighting effects and your camera doesn't mess up at a certain point,
God,
or like,
please.
Oh my gosh, looping something was like my nightmare. I remember starting out not really knowing how to seamlessly, get something going as far as a loop goes, and it was one of the most hair-pulling experiences rendering out something overnight for 12 hours, hoping it will blend, and then it doesn't. So I was inspired by so many people kind of starting the creation with TouchDesigner, which I hadn't seen before really in like a real-time setting. My friend Breckwood, Truffala, as well as Joe Vassar, Tenorless,
of course,
two big inspirations of mine. I'll always say that they are some of my top inspirations. They kind of showed me a way of silky smooth performance that I hadn't kind of seen before out of TouchDesigner, as well as Jack Anti-Alias. I saw him do a couple TouchDesigner sets, and I'd never really, Jack Gurley, and I'd seen him do a couple TouchDesigner sets and never really thought to use it like that. So the push towards it was challenging myself, as well as kind of moving something towards something that I could see results of my creations a little quicker.
That's so cool. And was it a smooth transition? Was it something that took you a while to figure out? I mean, it's like, you know, you're not the type of nerd that I'm the type of nerd, you know, of like computers and stuff. You're more of like an art kind of creative nerd. So was the transition to like a visual scripting, which is what TouchDesigner is, was it challenging? Was it scary? You know, what were some difficulties there that you managed to overcome?
Yeah, so from the outside, TouchDesigner is one of the most intimidating from the outside, and I think that that's what pushed me towards creating with it. Is I wanted to challenge myself, and starting out, I did a 30-day challenge, and I forced myself to make a new patch every day for 30 days, no matter if I hated it, no matter what, and I just forced myself to post it every day, just because I wanted to show people my learning process and, you know, the development of starting out using a program that's intimidating like TouchDesigner, and really putting a face to it, saying, hey, you can do this. I did it. And I'm still using it to this day. And I think that is you know, one of the biggest pushes was that it was intimidating, and forcing myself to learn with it really kind of pushed me past the boundaries of what I thought I knew.
Interesting. So it was almost like the challenge was what motivated you to continue taking the challenge, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. I like
and just
that.
the endless sandbox factor of TouchDesigner is really kind of what prompted me to continue creating with it. I felt like using Resolume, I was reaching a lot of, you know, standstill points where I would use an effect and push it to a certain amount parameter wise and really be limited. I'm like, oh man, I wish I could like add in another option to do this. And in TouchDesigner, you can do it yourself. It's just a matter of building out, you know, chops and systems that affect values. So
for sure. Yeah. And it's also like TouchDesigner, I always say this to people when they want to learn new, you know, real-time softwares or node-based systems, visual scripting. TouchDesigner, you're not just learning visual scripting, you're learning the very basics of visual scripting. You're not just learning to, you know, make beautiful things. You're actually learning coding. You're literally learning how to utilize operations and math and recalls and callbacks, parameters and references in different places. And you need to build everything from the ground up. So you're almost forced in a way to learn the techniques. You're forced to learn how to make reaction diffusion. You're forced to learn how to make feedback. It's not just a effect. It's not just a operator. You know, and obviously, you know, we don't have to get into the whole notch versus touch thing because we all know that touch is better. You know, it's just it's the idea of learning how to think, you know, in the terms of audio visual manipulation. I think that touch is very good at that. And I think it's a great place to start. But not everybody's like you, you know, not everybody sees a challenge and is like, oh, I'm going to do this. Most people see a challenge as like, well, I think I'll go to the easier one. You know, especially I think a lot of people have that way of looking. So before we go a little bit more deeper into TouchDesigner, excuse me, I want to go a little bit back a second to kind of clothing and branding. You kind of mentioned it a little bit, and I didn't really jump into it enough. But I don't know if you had a clothing brand, but I think you were part of a collective of a clothing brand. Is that correct?
So I did a lot of commission work for Ground Score, who's a company based out of Wisconsin, and my good friend Mihal runs that company. And it just kind of became a thing where they started designing merchandise, and they needed, you know, a couple artists, and I became one of the ones on the roster that was constantly creating for them. So seeing my work on products that I never thought I would be able to design, like hooded robes and hoodies and joggers and stuff like that, sublimation became like a really prevalent thing, and doing all over prints became a very common theme. And my illustration design work was really just kind of vibrant, colorful. And then I also had the, you know, polar opposite end where I would do black and white line work, and I love the aesthetic of that just as much as my colored in work. So putting that on clothing, it was a really cool thing. And not having to put up my own money necessarily to produce it, but still see my work in the wild and then me get benefits from that was a really motivating factor.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's one of those things that I feel like I never really got into enough is like product design. And not, it's not even product design, right? It's just like putting your you're putting your art on products. I think it's a really powerful way, like you said, to see your art in the wild. It's also like, it's that instant feedback, it's that instant feedback of somebody being excited by wearing your art it's very akin to somebody seeing your art on a screen and being like, wow, I love it.
Yeah,
I think it's really cool. Are you, I know you have like some merch that you have on your Instagram and other places, but are you still focusing on branding and stuff like that and products and stuff like this?
Yeah, so that's kind of one thing I'm focusing kind of as I go along with it. I did a hoodie drop recently, and then a t-shirt drop sometime last year, and I got a really good response from the t-shirts, and just seeing them out and about at shows and stuff like that, it became a thing where I'm like, wow, like people like are really receptive to wearing my art. And if I can make something that
right?
Yeah, that's the hoodie I put out this past end of the year, probably December I released that. Nice. And but yeah, so I made a t-shirt. I made a t-shirt for Tipper and Friends a couple years prior to that, and been trying to build up my website. It's currently under construction, but PapaBearArts.net. Definitely will be back up soon, maybe with another drop t-shirt, who knows. But yeah, it's definitely something I'm focusing on. Definitely inspired by some of the people that have done it before me, Jonathan Singer, Datagramma, Droid Visuals, Zip Visuals.
Yeah, Datagramma is so good at that. They have such
good man, yeah, they have branded the reaction diffusion in the best possible way, you know what I mean? It's cool. Totally. It's cool to see though. It's very recognizable. It's like, oh hey, that's Datagramma. So that's definitely an inspiration as far as building out my own brand, is seeing other visual artists do it as well.
Hell yeah. Cool. So we're gonna jump in soon. I just want to ask you about two things in TouchDesigner. This is very TouchDesigner specific. So RayTK, RayTK is a tool set of ray marching nodes inside of TouchDesigner. Basically allows you to do very complex and intricate HLSL visualizations without needing to know codes. And Tommy Etkin, who's actually going to be on very soon, made a slew of nodes and tools to do this. What has it been like using RayTK, and what are some of the challenges in a good way? But like, what are some of the differences of using it versus using just normal TouchDesigner?
Yeah, so you are able to create kind of more, I don't want to say layered out scenes. You can layer plenty with, enough tops and and stuff like that using native stuff. But just coming from 3D and Cinema 4D, and then figuring out that there was a way to make 3D scenes in a sense in TouchDesigner really pushed me into learning RayTK really quickly off the bat. My friend Breck Truffala, he had been using it for a minute, and I was about a few days into my 30-day challenge, and he kind of suggested, he's like, hey, you should take a crack at RayTK. And so I opened it up, and it was instantly just a toolbox where I could start creating infinite scenes, landscapes, and morphing geometry in a way that I was able to make it audio reactive very easy off the bat. Have a bunch of different shapes, distortion effects to play with, to pump into the SDFs and geometry, and overall just became fun to mess with scenes. And that's kind of how I've built out my scenes, is I'm able to manipulate them over time where it's a fresh scene from start to finish until I transition into the next one. So RayTK kind of made it easy to do that and get out my vision a lot quicker than sitting there building out SOP networks, into geometry chain and, doing post effects from there.
Well, SOPs are also very unoptimized.
Yeah, no, 100%.
You can do a crazy, if you're a really high level coding and stuff like that, you can do really cool stuff, but just out of the box, it is very difficult to get SOPs and SOPs are surface operators, so they're 3D inside of TouchDesigner. I love RayTK. I haven't played with it enough. Every time I do play with it, I get like sucked in for like 10 hours, just like, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm like, I make a bunch of questions for Tommy to ask him after, and just bombard him with questions.
Oh man,
and he's like, dude,
I would blow up his inbox so much if I asked all the questions I wanted to. But he's a busy man and he's doing great things as far as putting it out.
Such a lovely guy. I'm super happy to know him.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
So another awesome tool in TouchDesigner that you use is AAVJ, and we shouted out anti-alias Jack Hurley a moment ago. He created a really awesome, I would call it a Resolume port into TouchDesigner. How is that kind of, because you were using Resolume for a while, I think, and I'm assuming that you just NDI'd or spouted your TouchDesigner into Resolume and went out from there. What has it been like being able to stay within TouchDesigner, within AAVJ? How has it helped you in your VJing?
So it became a way to not have to have Resolume as that buffer of NDIing out. And it's essentially Resolume, I don't want to pigeonhole it like this, but it's an efficient way of laying out your patches in a playable sense as far as layering. And it was very familiar to me because it's along the lines of, what Resolume does as far as mixing video clips, but this is for, TouchDesigner patches. So loading in seamlessly your patch and being able to blend between them as well as control the live parameters is so big. And God bless Jack for putting this together. I'm currently working on the last version I had got from him. It's not the most up to date, but as far as functionality, it's what I perform with. It's and it's only improving. I see some of the changes he's going to be making and putting out. He's taking his time to craft it, and it's going to be a game-changing thing for anyone using TouchDesigner. And I definitely think it's going to be an encouraging thing for other people to get into TouchDesigner because it's an efficient way to mix.
Yeah, he really nailed it on the head. And when I say Resolume port, I only mean in the aesthetic. I think that everything else.
I cut myself off because I don't want to compare it to that.
I said it.
It is its own thing. Yeah, it's definitely its own thing, but it's way more customizable down to
way more customizable. I actually the first version of AAVJ, this is like maybe 2 years ago, maybe more. I think more actually, but either way, I was using TouchDesigner in a very different way that it didn't really make sense for me to use AAVJ. But and I've told this to Jack, so it's okay for me to say it, but I took out the audio reaction module that has the waveform and the lines with the threshold. I think in the new version it looks different, but I still use that till this day. I never even just that little visualization of the audio was so like totally changed my whole approach to like audio reaction. And now seeing how it's evolved and how beautiful it looks and, all the amazing work that he's putting into it is so powerful. He's definitely going to be on here as well. He's a very, very busy man too. Yeah. So I think this is actually a good time to jump into what we have, what you have prepared here for us today. So I'm going to just get us in here. This is AAVJ. Yeah, please take it away, Jesse.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a file itself, it's it's built into a container. So press F1 to enable the window, and it brings it out of a project view into hang on just a second. I actually need to.
Well, if you want to give a quick. Do you want to give a quick run over of AAVJ, and then we'll jump into the set, and I'll turn on the sound, and we could just go for a little bit?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. Okay, so let me restart that. Okay. All right, so yeah, this is AAVJ. It's built inside of a container in TouchDesigner. So as I press F1, it brings up the container menu, and I'm able to drag and drop my Tox files. I'll build out the TouchDesigner files themselves in .to, which is a standard TouchDesigner file, and then you save it, you collapse it and save it with an output and a thumbnail, and the thumbnail shows up here when you drag and drop it, and now these are instantly playable, and I can blend between them, layer them up, change between blending modes. That's a big thing. I usually have my blending mode set to like a lighten or a maximum, something like that. It's just something I had set up in my Resolume that I kind of carried over. But being able to blend between multiple different things, and I have a bunch of different parameters set up for each patch. So I've transitioned a little bit less from audio reactivity to manual control, because it's almost like finger drumming and adapting to the music on the fly. Because as VJs, we are constantly trying to adapt to whatever music's playing. And a lot of times we don't know what's coming next. So I've found a lot of joy in actually, being manual with it and switching up the camera on beat, on snare, kind of choosing in my head what I want to, react to. I love audio reactivity, and I'm still going to implement it, but I found in recent sets, I've had to do a lot of more up-tempo stuff as well as down-tempo, but on the up-tempo stuff, it's a lot of fun changing up parameters on the fly. And AAVJ is, definitely a great source for blending between all the different patches pretty seamlessly. It builds up a cache here, and you can clear it out by pressing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And this will change in this next version, I believe, but it kind of builds up a VRAM cache. I've loaded in every patch, so it's going to stay at this about 4 gigs right now.
So once you load in all your stuff, it just sits there and doesn't grow essentially. So you can kind of like
cook as it's disabled. It turns off the cooking for it. So,
but it's cached, so it loads right away.
And I can layer usually probably about 3 different ones before I start seeing any frame drops. And you can kind of usually tell by the cook time. You could tell that inside the network. If it starts getting over a certain value, you're gonna notice a couple frames dropping. But that also comes with the intensity of the patch. A lot of my native TouchDesigner stuff will load in instantly. A lot of GLSL code instantly. But when I start getting a little bit more complicated RayTK networks, they become a little bit heavy on the GPU load, especially if I'm modifying parameters or reacting to audio. It's just more cooking involved in it. So,
okay.
But
let's jump in.
Yeah.
Nice. Sick. So do you have like a bunch of post-process effects above the actual patches as well?
Yeah, so I'll finish the network off, whether it's GLSL code or RayTK, and then I'll go back in and add certain parameters like adjusting the transform and adding a hold to it so it adds those kind of blow lines, or even displacement, pixelization, and edge detect after that. And I have different keyboard ends, so I put a lag on it so they're able to essentially be a quick knob turn where I would have to normally map on a MIDI controller. I'm able to memorize the keys and know what each key does. So for instance, this kind of solar plex, or these plexuses, when I press 3, it begins this warp, and it starts displacing it. If I press 2, it's going to add another instance with the transform on it.
I love it.
If I press 4, it's going to add in these pixelized kind of bits. 5 is a different warp.
So it just comes in slowly, kind of thing.
Yeah. So one of my favorite, I love VJing for down tempo. So those smooth movements are everything, and I've really focused, especially with like VJing and Resolume and stuff, fading very slowly and being intentional, fading in and out of mirrors, not being abrupt with it, is a huge thing. So making something that I can control and putting a little bit of lag on it allowed me to control parameters using keys without having to sit there and memorize a knob, just because I knew that, the number for it.
Smart.
So for instance here, just talking about combining things, this is a RayTK network, but I went back in and made a reaction diffusion system, and I'm using that within the edge glow that I have here. So I'm combining different things, native TouchDesigner into RayTK.
Nice.
I'm using that, taking the step count to get that edge glow, and then multiplying a reaction diffusion system into it. So combining different elements to make a fresh, crisp looking patch, rather than, hey, this is a RayTK patch. You know what I mean? It's all about pushing it, adding different elements. Like for this one, for instance, I added in,
I love this one,
just distorted text. That's actually like one of my friend's names, just repeated. But
really?
Just changing the sample step out on an edge kind of blows it out, and then if you edge it again, use an edge detection, it almost makes a little abstract pattern out of like a simple font. Cool. So I have, when I shift certain parameters, it shifts that as well, the top and bottom border. But I'm able to, when I press 1, kind of grows in size of the orb in the center. 2 changes angle, 3 changes angle, 4 and 5 will change the field of view out just slightly. So I
love this idea of a keyboard MIDI controller. I love it. It makes it's like memory wise, I'm like constantly like, if I change any of my layout, the whole first hour of my set is like, what am I doing? I try not to change it anymore. I try to keep it the same, logic, but it's just still,
No, it's definitely, I tell people I do it and they're like, I have other friends that use TouchDesigner as well. And they're kind of like, that's all you do for your controls? And I'm like,
Right.
well, no, I have a MIDI fighter, with all my mirroring and distortion effects that I need and blending in and out of layers. But for the most part, I am sitting there and I know what each parameter and key does. So,
Right.
there may be some times I goof and press the wrong button, but I have enough time to usually correct it or fade out of an effect I accidentally faded into. But I have most of my patches down to a point now where they're memorized and I know what I'm doing when I'm pressing a key. I know that, I'm creating a dramatic moment by changing the field of view and zooming out more on a scene at a certain point in a song, because I know a certain key will slowly bring out my field of view on something.
I also love how the RayTK like vibe is like this. It's like a very interesting mix between like 2-dimensional, 3-dimension. It's like because what you see almost when you're looking at stuff is like 2D, but then the third dimension is very clear when you move forward or move in or whatever. I just love that. Such a nice effect.
I'm definitely working on getting different looks out of the materials. There's a certain point where materials kind of start looking similar, so I've really tried to dial in and try to make stuff look really metallic, or if I am going for something like a tune shader, make it look extra toony, just so there's no kind of weird middle ground of like, is this a realistic material or not?
I like that.
So that's definitely something I'm still working on.
That's beautiful. Is this RayTK too?
Yeah, this is all RayTK.
Sick.
And I love the ray marching. I never really messed around with ray marching until RayTK, and being able to create these endless landscapes of geometry to fly through and warp twists.
Yeah.
Really fun.
Yeah, and it's extremely performant. Depends what you're doing, obviously, but when it comes to like manipulating shapes and iterations, and endless iteration, the ray marching is very, very performant. I always just find it so funny that there's no actual there's no topology, there's no points, there's no vertices. It's literally just like rays being shot and being told what to do. It's just like such a trippy thing to think about. I come from like classic 3D. It's like it's all about those polygons. And in ray marching, it's like, what's a polygon?
Exactly.
I just love it.
No, it's really fun to be able to get out ideas so quick. Like I find myself getting out an idea in half an hour's time and then spending the next 8 hours polishing it.
Right. So cool. Nice. Whoa. Shit, that was cool.
I try not to go too heavy on like the camera turns and stuff because it
Go
can
heavy,
be
bro. Go heavy.
Yeah,
Let's go.
it can get a little dizzying, especially on a large LED wall. I don't want to make anyone throw up. No, but I have so much fun with this, especially manipulating it live to,
Yeah.
Well,
this one's just so cool because you know, the breaking of structure from something that you see to something that like, straight lines and then all of a sudden it's cubes. That for me is like the best visuals is when you change something abruptly. Like you go from something very obvious to something very abstract. I love that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Nice. I love this these shifting numbers. So cool. Is it like are you like morphing between things or is it just textures that you're just switching out?
So it's GLSL edit of numbers kind of matrixing down the screen, but
Okay.
shifting up, inputting my own parameters into the code and make it attached to my keyboard ends. I'm able to pretty much distort numbers is essentially what's happening. And I kind of found a couple parameters that shifted into a square diamond shape,
Cool.
a little bit more abstract of one.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a nice, transition.
Yeah, and then this is kind of like more abstract numbers, and then I can bring it back to the actual kind of digital look as well.
Sick.
Kind of shift through it.
Are you finding most of your GLSL from Shader Toy and places like that?
Yeah, so I'm grabbing the ones with the that I'm able to kind of edit or messaging people as far as if I want to edit their code and kind of use it in a way that I'm able to use it in my composition. And I'm kind of using their ideas as a base to then layer on top of my native TouchDesigner work into as far as like making borders for certain elements like this one, and this is RayTK, but just kind of incorporating more of my elements, but using Shader Toy shaders as a base.
I love this. It's got pumpkin vibes.
I call this the golden dumplings. These are because I can open them up and
shit.
But then I can bring it back to dumplings if I want.
Love it. So for like camera control or like speed, anything like that, you don't have knobs, or you do?
So that's something that I'm reworking right now in my my composition. Is I plan on making a master constant. A lot of these are abs time seconds as far as the setup for them, and then my parameters will either add to that abs time or subtract from it depending on And but my plan is to make a constant value that I'm able to control with a knob to adjust to the speed of the sets. But generally, when I go into a set, I know generally the tempo that I'm pacing it for.
You'll get ready for it.
Yes. So for instance, for the Maxfield show recently at the theater, I paced everything very slow because I knew it was going to be an ambient set. So I had to slow down a lot of my values. But in doing that, I really learned that I should set up a constant throughout the whole thing for everything to reference, and then just be able to change that from there.
Yeah, I mean, we'll make your life a lot easier.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Like the end result sometimes is like, we're always a lot of the time focused on like the end result of like, is it gonna look good? Is it gonna look good?
Yeah.
We forget about
the simple things.
Yeah, how do I make my life easier? Because it's like the end result will be the same.
No, 100%. Yeah, it's just all these little things that I've been wanting to add to make my life easier. It's like just between sets, I just haven't had the time or whatever to build out the systems. But something like that is something I plan on doing before this next set.
This is back in the Resolume days. It was much more prevalent because like you're playing with effects and you find something, what you were talking about before, like you find something and you're like, oh, that's cool. Okay, I gotta remember how to do that. And then I used to write down like on my phone, like, okay, if I add brightness to a bloom, or I don't remember what it was. If I add brightness to a feedback, it does something cool. And then like I'd have all these like super cryptic, like very like drugged, notes. And after the show, I would look at them and be like, what the fuck does this mean?
What the heck did I write now?
Yeah, and I just stopped doing it, But every once in a while, I'll have like a massive revelation, and I'll like try to stop what I'm doing or take a break for a second and like really write it down legibly so that I can understand it later. Because sometimes during the sets is when you come up with the best ideas.
Yeah, 100%.
Like just from experimenting in the moment, in the flow is when you come up with some of the best ideas.
Yeah, I agree.
Ooh, that was such a nice transition.
Yeah, I don't have my MIDI controller set up, so I am just using the transition time right now to kind of.
Yeah. Who is the music by the way?
This is my friend Widge. It's a bunch of different music, but as far as the set goes, this is what he had put together for a recent performance.
Nice. Widge.
But it's
WIJ.
WIJ, and he'll be performing an ambient set at Tipper and Friends.
Oh,
really good friend from Asheville. So
hell yeah.
His selection of music is chef's kiss. Nice. Just kind of clicking around, but
I love it.
Yeah, I usually kind of set up my columns in ways that I plan on performing from bottom up. So
wow, that was an awesome set, Jesse. Thank you so much for performing for us and giving us like a really awesome overview of how cool your visuals are and what we can expect from a live PapaBear set. I'd love to jump into your setup and see a little bit how you use AAVJ and maybe see how you make some of your scenes. So yeah, please take it away.
Yeah, so AAVJ is very customizable as far as just the the layout, the looks, as far as the interface goes. So I would go with the yellow. When you trigger a clip, it kind of has a yellow box around it, and a lot of my scenes are not yellow, so I kind of use it as something to really stand out as far as
some contrast.
being able to tell which clips are playing, and all of that can be controlled within this interface. And you change the resolution of the displays, enable the amount of layers, layer slots, and effect slots, and everything is custom like built out as far as the effects that you're able to include down here. So these are just toxes. This is a simple just mirror tox. If I open it up, it's just an out with a tile on it that I'm controlling. So I have that in this bottom effect panel here, and you're able to kind of just build out your own effects. I don't have too many loaded in at the moment in this composition. This is kind of just an example comp. But usually I'll set up my columns in a general order of the way I want to layer them. Coming from a Resolute background, just building up layers or triggering columns, but only fading in one layer at a time, really kind of, elongates the play on a clip as well as builds with the moment and the music. So that's kind of one thing I wanted to implement as well in my TouchDesigner performances, was being able to layer in element after element, slowly building in more textures, more movement, more organic motion. A big thing I've said before is I really stress movement and textures. I really want to elicit emotion. It's just, it could be the most random noise or goop, but, layered tastefully over another clip, providing a certain motion is, what I strive for. So even if it is something as simple as just like kind of like a HUD layer or, something like this is, which is a little bit more like line work, being able to layer that in is important to me. Obviously I'm kind of clicking around right now, but I usually have my columns kind of in a general kind of color palette. Obviously there's ones that kind of break the mold, like the orange, but that's kind of what I go for. Just kind of random chaotic moments throughout the set that kind of break the eye a little bit, as far as the color palette being used. So really just a lot of room for on the fly change ups, especially if I have something layered in a column. 9 times out of 10 I'll end up using a different clip, 2 columns down or something like that. But
right,
generally I like to organize it in a way that it's playable in a sequence.
Nice. Yeah, you have a really awesome color palette. Like blue purple. That's kind of like very it's like colors that almost induce like good, like not like not like the color theory of like different warm colors and cold colors. I just feel like that the contrast between the blue and the purple induce this kind of like giddy feeling,
Yeah.
something about it.
I love that the inclusion with pinks and purples and stuff kind of adds a playful value to what is usually like cool colors, which are sometimes considered depressing. I think that little extra spike of color kind of brings a different look to that color palette.
I think so too, and it's nice to see color palettes. Like I'm a artist that doesn't really have a color palette. I just try to have like contrast in colors to like create some sort of contrast emotion or contrast feeling. But I love when visual artists have like their favorite colors, It's just nice because it creates a coherency that I think is that creates like recognizable like who am I watching right now kind of thing.
No, 100%.
I just can't. I just can never pick a color palette, and also I just like always hue rotate everything. So it's like, I just like, okay, also with Psytrance, it's like you have to be ready to change on a whim. You know, it's like so much different. Like even though the BPM is very similar, there's so many different varieties. And usually you're kind of like VJing across like a whole night. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, whereas I think you guys in a lot more times in the bass scene, you're either doing one set or two sets, and it's like for one artist, and also just bass music in general kind of has a very overarching kind of theme, you know, like the bass basically.
It's very bass central for sure.
Very bass central. And then with ambient music, it's like the ambient is the easiest to keep in a color palette because it's almost like it calls to not have too much big changes, right? Because you kind of want to throw people into like a somewhat of a journey. So
yeah, you want to elongate those moments out rather than, you know, having to switch up on the fly when the song's changing constantly.
Yeah.
Get a little bit more room to breathe.
AAVJ is so cool. It's so awesome that Jack made this for the community, and that I don't know the availability of it, to be honest, but Jack's a really nice guy, and if you reach out to him on Instagram, I'm sure he'll give you access to it. I don't think there's like a landing page or website or anything, so I don't know how to get people out to it. There is a Discord, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yes, there's a AAVJ Discord. And from what I've seen, I think I just mentioned this before, but just some of the changes and updates that I've seen kind of behind the scenes, little sneak peeks, are definitely going to be some of the game-changing things to really sway people towards TouchDesigner performance. Really excited about that, but good things take time. So
I mean, it's
rushing them
for sure. It's amazing to have something like this. I all my TouchDesigner performances are all extremely messy. Noodle soup of like scenes and blending modes and like lots of logic to like save performance between things. And, I've built myself a system that works really well for me, but it's in no way scalable or easily configurable. And it definitely doesn't have a beautiful UI. So I think it's really awesome to have something like this for people that don't want to have to leave TouchDesigner. Because really the alternative is if you don't know how to program that kind of stuff, which is a totally different skill set than like making visuals in TouchDesigner, then you have to use something like Resolume and Spout, and you have to figure out a smart way to switch scenes unless you're just like loading them up each time. And it's another software, so you're adding another chink in the chain that can go wrong. And and it's just uncomfortable. So having something like this is just great. Just great.
I'm very excited for the future of it. Just seeing more and more people that were just making patches before and not really knowing what to do with them now seeing as an attainable performance mode. It's pretty cool to see. So only up from here with AAVJ. Let's go, Jack.
Let's go, Jack. Anti-alias for the win.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's. It would be cool to jump into one of your scenes and see how you create these beautiful visual scapes.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'd love to see how the sausage is made, as it were.
So, I have recently learned. Well, not recently. Since I've been using TouchDesigner, I really wanted to take the dive into RayTK, seeing so many different creations with it. I definitely created a lot of stuff in the native TouchDesigner before kind of moved forward with RayTK, but it was the ultimate toolbox right off the bat, and not really knowing too much about specific terminology of TouchDesigner yet. At the time, I came from a 3D background, so geometry is something I knew. Modifying geometry with effectors in Cinema 4D, I knew that. I knew cameras, I knew lighting, so it was only kind of a matter of learning this vocabulary. And when you this is kind of the basic kind of build out that I've made for myself to start a RayTK patch. When you load it in, it's just this you load it in as a tox, and it's just this kind of floating box here. And you can follow the tutorials on the text YouTube page as far as setting up some of the basics. But you bring in a Raymarch render 3D kind of as your final output before post effects. You'll see this is the output from there. So in my network, I typically have, it varies from patch to patch, but I'll bring in a specular contribute material, a diffuse, and usually just a rim set to
nice.
0, so I can kind of play with that
the rim
later.
Edition. That's cool.
Yeah,
I didn't even know they had a rim contribution.
Yeah, this is 0.35, I believe, but they're now at 0.39. I think they added that in the late 0.2s, but that's definitely one of my favorites to kind of use. So starting out, you can start out with some of the most basic shapes. You can open this with Alt-R, and down below, I usually just search SDF to kind of go through the options here. Lots of really cool things to play with. They have, fractals that I remember from like back in Mandelbulb days in here, as well as bunnies and chains and anything you can imagine. But I love seeing the new SDF floated in. I'm like, all right, how can I melt that whenever the new updates come? But so lots of stuff to choose from. I'll show you kind of a one of the workflows.
Just a quick side note: an SDF is a sign distance field. So RayTK is ray marching, which is using a lot of bit different ways of rendering than 3D rendering, and it's really just different vectors and points in 3D space that are being told to show imagery or show something. So it's a very different way of working with three-dimensional space that isn't really three-dimensional.
Yep. Now you'll see I'm adding a combine node right here. This is one of the bread and butter ways to combine shapes and get some really cool results by combining two different shapes into one. Let me scale this a bit. Okay. So we have two different box frames. And you'll see I changed the combine to column union. There's a bunch of different options you can do. Smooth union kind of smooths out where the shapes intersect. Let me make this a little thicker so we can kind of see what's going on.
Yeah.
So right at where the edges combine, you can start to see, because I selected smooth union, it's smoothing out between those. So another playful one is column union. You can control the amount of columns between those shapes, the radius of it, as well as the offset. Offset's a fun one. If you're familiar with the abs time.seconds, it just creates a constant value forward. You can set something like the offset, press play, offset to be animated at a certain speed, so we can have it, going away from us. We make it negative, they'll start going towards us.
Nice.
So these, just something easy, fun, playful. This is one of the first things I probably learned, was the combining of the shapes in RayTK. So from here, it's about kind of thinking, all right, so like, what do I want this box to do? One of the big things that I is a repeat thing in my pieces is the modulo. So you are essentially, from what I understand, ray marching in one direction, two directions, or three dimensions, two dimensions or 3 dimensions. So something as simple as like a box, if we just want to get like a simple tunnel going, I'll just do one dimension. So I could set it to go through the Z axis. So this will create repeat iterations of what we have going on right now. You can adjust the size of it to get a little bit better of a more realistic tunnel. Something as simple as this, you can set the shift again to negative abs time, not seconds. Let's do it times 0.05. Let's speed up actually. So now we have, without moving the camera at all, we're moving the repeated geometry towards us, essentially past us. And that's, the camera is not moving at all. It's stuck in this 6.5, but that's where kind of, the fun comes in. So now that that's being affected by itself, we can modify the camera. So let's say we want the camera to spin. Let's do it times 5. Nice. Now we have a rotating, twisted, tunnel kind of going down. And this is just the, kind of beginning stages. I'll take it from here and just past or just before. Sometimes I'll put something like a twist. So there's lots of cool things. There's a twist. There's like a bend in here as well. Let's try out the twist first. So you can do some bunch of different options: X towards Y, X towards Z, different axes to twist on axes. Maybe it's not changing it because I'm. All right, yeah, sometimes you have to put it before you march it, so. There we go. So you can get some really abstract, sometimes it kind of gets a little bit grainy. The SDF starts to break, so it's kind of a fine line of juggling.
You could also add
geometry.
some more iterations at the end if you have a little bit of performance overhead, right? I think on the render.
Yeah. There's under Raymarch render, you can go under settings and you can adjust the distance correction factor. So what this will do is it'll be a little bit heavier on the GPU I've found, but you can push the values kind of lower and it'll smooth out and make a lot of those grainy spots a lot less, as well as adjusting the maximum distance. What if we kind of brought those down? It'd make it, more of like a less infinite room, but those are a bunch of different options you can kind of play with.
And the max steps as well, I think, also help with the graininess.
Yeah, it's max steps. Sometimes I'm kind of playful with it, and I'll actually bring that down to
the lowest you can go.
Really low. So it's like it's more of like a cartoony kind of toon shader look. But yeah, just mess with these settings. Don't really push the distance correction factor too low. I found that it has crashed my computer multiple times, but yeah, but something like a twist is kind of bound to kind of break the SDF like that. So yeah, it's really about either just doing a subtle twist or here's the bend, which is
sick.
Pretty wild. And I can even, just off the top of I'm like, all right, well, let's put a noise field through the box frame. And just by adding a simplex 2D noise field to the scale field of the box, I'm able to make a really abstract kind of more random than a rigid box frame look.
It looks super cool. Is that just, you're just putting a noise, you're just adding a noise field to the box SDF? So like the box now is like noisy essentially?
Yeah, so that's what 2D looks like. 3D, if you add like a simplex 3D, kind of gets a little squirrely, but adding something like that, you could
get some interesting results.
The amplitude. Yeah, so it's fun to be able to, I don't know, take a basic shape and make it completely abstract from what it originally was,
Sure.
especially like something like a rigid tunnel gives it a little bit more of an organic feel.
For sure.
Here's a just little tip. You'll see kind of like some of the shapes will start clipping through the cameras. I think a lot of people kind of run into this issue, especially with just some ray marching. It's you'll run into random blackout moments where your camera's completely covered. And one kind of workaround for that is after your network, you're gonna want, or your modulo, you're gonna want to add a combine. So we're going to add this in. And then we're going to take a sphere. But instead of combining it, we're actually going to be doing a difference. So in the drop-down menu for combine, you can go to, my favorite to use for this is smooth difference. But for showing you sake, you can kind of see where this sphere is right now. So we're going to put it to where it actually blacks out the camera completely, or for the most part. And then we're going to switch this from simple union to smooth difference. So now, in theory, if I placed it correctly, where it starts hitting that sphere, it will smooth out rather than blacking out your camera. So now it's kind of eliminated the possibility of messing up with clipping by making a virtual sphere around your camera.
That's awesome. That's a great tip. Whoa.
And then from here, it's like just a matter of, all right, like, what do I want the materials to look like? Do I want them shiny? What kind of light do I want? This ring light I've been using a good bit. This was a recent addition. Let's just plug in here. So this one kind of a little bit more abstract than like a point light, but you can kind of control position of it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's like a little bit more of a circular light, I would imagine.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like on the y-axis placed. Yeah, about two.
Nice.
Two in the Z back towards the camera. All right, I guess I could talk a little bit about how I kind of will input some of my like keyboard ends into these patches. So for a lot of my performative patches, I like to change up, values on the fly. And great way of doing that is, keyboard end. There's lots of ways to set it up with a MIDI controller, knobs, MIDI fighters, whatever you want to do. But one of the ones I found, just especially while working on a patch, I want to be able to just sit here and kind of tap keys and kind of get instant results of what I'm eventually going to map to MIDI along the way. But so I'll do like a keyboard in. It's going to start reading key 1 right here. Something like a noise, like I added here. I have this going up already in a constant value. Let's say like I want to push that even more forward. So I'll put a count after the keyboard in. Something I always do is add a lag. I like some variable of lag, even if it is just like 0.2 seconds. I like the smoothness of it that you can adjust it to. As far as math goes, let's change it from 0 to 1, this 2 range. Let's have it jump up 5 every time that I press 1. So now you'll see when I press it, it's going to count up in value 5 every time. And we'll put a null at the end there. It's always
put a null at the end.
Always put a null. So something like this, for something that's already moving, I'll just kind of copy this so I have this value. And chop reference. And I'm sure there's a better way of going about that, but
No, this is the way.
Paste the apps value back in there, and add your keyboard 1 value. So now every time I press 1, I can kind of see that's a little bit too much. So we'll go back. Let's just change it down to 2. So now every time I press 2, it's going to jump 2 in value in the noise traveling on the y-axis.
And because you have the count there, then it's not going to jump back each time. It's going to retain where it is in space. Right, because if you didn't have the count, exactly. it would add 2 from 0 each time. So it would do that exactly.
Yeah, so it'd be more of a bounce. And another thing that you could do instead of a count, you could set a logic in here. So it's more of a toggle on, toggle off. I'll sometimes do this if I like a camera position in a certain area or a certain angle or something like that. I'll set it so I can toggle it so it will, move to that value and stay there until I turn the key off again.
Nice.
So a few different options of what you can kind of do, but for our sake right now, I can kind of keep it at a count. And so from here, just kind of like, all right, well, what other kind of values do I want to modify? So usually just kind of copy paste. And let's say we want to travel through the modulo Z space just like a little bit quicker, or, to a key tap. We can do that. So now every time I press 2, it's going to take 0.2 seconds to travel 2 in value on the Z. So now I have 2 different controls set up pretty easily.
Nice.
Yeah. The amount of hours I've spent just tinkering, just values, adding a bend, beauty, right? Like twist. Yeah, no, it's like I've watched one shader for 10 hours, of course.
The experimentation and fluidity of RayTK is really enjoyable. Like that's really, I think, where in general real time, right? Just having a real time workflow and being able to experiment and play with things and get instant feedback is like, it's really the funnest part of making art for me. And RayTK specifically is there's so many different things to do, like because it's not classic 3D, there's so many crazy things you can do, like in 3D, right? Like what can you do? You have a model, you can do some cool simulations maybe, but it's like lighting and texturing. And yeah, you can play with like camera position, lighting position, and there's so many things to do. But here it's like you're like literally like sculpting geometry with different modulations and different blending modes, and then the infinite aspect of like the modulation is like something that's so fun to play with. And really, like, the only way to get to good results is to play with it.
Yeah,
I really love that. Like that's like, in my eyes, it's like that's the key to like a software that I want to play. Like if I want to play with it and I'm enjoying playing with it, then that's like a software I want to create in.
Yeah, I mean it's like any like video game too. It's like you want the ultimate playability, and it's like for the longest time you can while exploring it and finding out new things. It's like
exactly.
The analogy.
Exactly. It's no two playthroughs are the same.
No, exactly. Yeah.
And it's kind of also like that's why I always choose real time and generative, because no two shows are the same. Even if I am playing with the same patches, it's going to be very different. Each one's going to be very different. And it's similar, when you were like mixing in Resolume, or when you're doing like effects and post-process, you're always going to experiment and find new things. But the power of generative math and, different types of LFOs and noises and things, it's like, it's not, you don't, it's not even like about finding variables and parameters. It's literally the thing itself is different every time.
Yeah. I have countless looks from my RayTK patches because it's, you know, I'll start with a different SDF every time, but then add 20 different variables that make it 20 times different from my previous patch. So
exactly. What are you doing here? You're adding some fog
so, yeah,
here?
so I wanted to kind of explain that.
Yeah,
so
please.
I'll use the depth map, which is the third output from this RayMarch render. And as long as you make sure that depth output is enabled, which it is by default, I believe, you load in a depth map from the toolkit and just bring that third output down to the input of the depth map. And what you're going to want to do is hit pulse, which essentially just grabs the depth of the current positioning. And then when you pull that, you can kind of see the effect already it has. This is a cool effect in and of itself to use, especially if you just like you want to have blackout materials or whatever the case may be. But you know, you wouldn't even have to use any of the speculative materials if you were just loading in something like that. And you know, usually I'll try to change the color of it a little bit, and something just as quick. I just threw in a constant to change up the color of the fog.
Nice.
And from there, I use a maximum blend mode. There's a few different ones that can achieve that too. Like add is kind of a similar look, but I've found that I like the maximum blending mode the best. So it's adjustable here. You can adjust it, the gamma in here, as well as you can adjust the gamma just on the level, past that. You kind of refine it a little bit more, bring up the brightness. If you wanted something like blowing out fog or whatever like that, you could kind of set that up. But definitely having kind of an ominous fog will help out with, especially scenes that you're using modulo with. Trying to figure out how you cap that, the end of something, especially an infinite tunnel, is difficult sometimes.
Fog is your friend.
Yes, fog is your friend.
Even like a black fog, it just some sort of fall off that allows you to not see the end of the tunnel, where it's where things are maybe breaking up, or where maybe you don't have an infinite tunnel, maybe it's finite, right? So having that fog creates a really nice fall off, and I think it's a very good workflow to have when you have tunnels, for sure. Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah, bringing down I just realized that ring light was kind of blowing out everything. So even just kind of adjusting that, or even just bringing it further down the tunnel is cool too. Just the intensity is just real low, or
it's so interesting.
So many different results.
The RayTK is some things function the way that you would imagine, right? Like a light pointing in a direction, but some things do crazy shit that you're just there's no logic to this. It's just playing with stuff until something cool happens, and that's I don't know. I think that's really fun, It's a totally different way of creating things, because it's just it's really what we said before. It's the experimentation in itself is what is creating cool things. And this is actually what Tommy, the creator of RayTK, talked about a lot in his episode, in his set, was that he doesn't know what he's gonna do when he sits down at RayTK. When he sits down to make something, he doesn't have a direction. He's just okay, I'm gonna try this and see what this does, and that's cool. To me, that's that's a tool that's beneficial to the creative process.
There's a lot of that. It's going in there kind of on the edge of your seat, just all right, I'm throwing down notes. Some of them, for the most part, it'll kind of tell you what you can kind of plug in by hovering over the left side of it and say, all right, this is a color contribution. You can plug a material into this, but for a lot of it, it is just kind of like throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least for me.
There's definitely no, for sure. I mean, it might not be so intuitive in terms of like how you connect things, but you watch 1 or 2 or 3 tutorials of like the basics, even just following this, right? Basics. You have SDF shapes, you can modulate them, and they go into a render. That's what you need to know. And then you start playing with those things. Okay, maybe you won't be able to do extremely intricate and have the finite detail of control, but you'll be able to run in and start playing with it. And playing with things is the best way to learn how to control. Look at that. The rim is sick, huh? I love that rim. I didn't know they had that. I'm definitely going to use that.
Yeah.
I love the rim light. Rim light is like
fun,
the fastest, cheapest way of getting super nice lighting without actual lighting. So the only thing that I'm missing in like this kind of look, and this is like because I'm just like my brain is like just trained to think that way, is shadows. That's the only thing.
So I do actually not have on. I don't think. Oh, never mind. I was gonna say you can turn on ambient occlusion. That definitely helps a good bit. Yeah, but I definitely. And I'm pretty sure there's a shadow contribute too.
There is. No, some of the lights have shadows. Some of the lights have shadows, but it's like they're not extremely accurate.
Yeah. No, I understand that.
I think it's in the light itself.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure. And I think it's 2 things. It's in the lights themselves they have shadows. Yeah, and then in the in the actual ray the render, you have to enable shadows as well. I think it's in render. Yeah, it's in render.
And enable shadow.
And now you're gonna drop. Oh, not so bad drop frames. But now.
Yeah, I was gonna say last time I tried to do that, it was eating.
The question is like, what are the shadows? What is shadows?
I know, yeah. Where is
where is my light in this thing, and what's the
lots of randomness, but that's the fun and the chaos.
Yeah. I mean, like I'm not trying to pull your leg or anything, but this looks super cool, and we only worked on it for like 20 minutes, and I've been biting your ear off while you're doing it, so it's like. Do you get into the flow state when you play with these scenes? Like, do you feel like you just kind of dive in and you're just like kind of in this really nice flow of creation? What's that kind of like experience like for you?
Yeah, so I definitely would consider it along the lines of a flow state. It's for a while I was just like, man, I'm zoning out, but it's like. It really is just kind of like you get into a rhythm of knowing how to operate your operators and and thinking like the logically as far as trying to control values of things, whether it be something in RayTK or calculating something like this as trying to get a certain value really kind of drives me to keep like creating in the patch. So adding little things like the keyboard ends, just seeing variations in it, I do get into a flow state of adding things and not even really realizing time's flying by. 4 hours pass and I've made a fully fleshed out RayTK scene.
Nice. Could we jump into a fully fledged out scene and see kind of the like what it looks like when it's a more fully fledged one?
Yeah, let me see what I can pull up here. So this one definitely has a good bit of everything as far as native TouchDesigner, RayTK, and then some kind of post-processing, I believe.
Nice.
All right.
Ooh.
So this is one that I had kind of shown earlier. But again, this is kind of show you the breakdown of what it starts as and kind of the end result of it. But this is also missing a texture.
Papa Drive.
Let's just put this on here for. Oh,
Nice.
find something.
More contrasty. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, maybe. All right. Yeah, maybe this for right now. So I have, a basic plane set up with the noise, kind of how similar what I did to that last box frame, just pumping a noise field through a plane. This is a value 3D noise. You're able to kind of go in here and choose one. Then I have, it combining with a texture field, which is that image under here. It's usually it's like a rocky kind of texture, but for all intents and purposes, I'm not going to sit here and dig through my whole drive to find that texture. So then I have it combining with a box, which is kind of the diamond shape, which you're kind of seeing in the center here.
Interesting.
So that's forming just kind of like a center diamond frame.
Nice.
Pretty simple as far as the initial SDFs go, but kind of where all the magic is happening here is something called step count. So you can enable that by going into your Raymarch Render 3D, hit step output, and what that's gonna do is going to be, I don't know the exact technical explanation of it, but it's grabbing the edges similar to how it appears right here. Adds kind of like an edge glow without edging out everything in your scene, and kind of a lot of the issues with adding an edge detection to something like that is it has trouble with like gradients, and I found that the step output has a little bit there's some banding in there, but you can kind of adjust that by doing some effects to it. So like this, I kind of smoothed it out a little bit and blurred it, so there's less banding, but this is what I used as kind of the base for my glow, and a good bit of my patches. And from there, just kind of recolored it with a ramp. It's kind of one of my go-tos is I love like just like a slowly kind of circular color shifting ramp between the color palette. And this is something that I kind of thought about just along the way as I was developing out the patches. I was like, well, it'd be cool to have like a reaction diffusion kind of pattern inlaid in the glow as it kind of went. So using this kind of system that I had made, pretty simple, I'm able to use that within that outline by compositing.
Are you using you're using the actual edges to generate the reaction diffusion? I see, because it's like some of the reaction diffusion has
so what I'm actually doing is actually pumping it back in. Where is it at? Yeah, so I'm using it as a
displacement.
To
That's
displace
so smart,
it.
Dude. That's so smart.
So I'm using I selected the outer network to go back into this inner network and then back out again. So it's kind of catching the edges as it.
Yeah, it's like still a very natural reaction diffusion, but you kind of the displacement gives it a little bit of a shape. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Super nice.
Yeah, and so then just from there, it's just a matter of kind of adjusting your effects as you go. You kind of, a lot of these can be kind of condensed down and optimized. You could do one node, with all the adjustments you needed on it. Sometimes I'll find myself with like 4 levels going down the chain. I'm like, I could have edited that and just like not had that down.
This is a great example of mixing your your TouchDesigner proper or TouchDesigner basic understanding and techniques into RayTK, right? Because you're kind of generating this quote unquote 3D scene, but then you're using like a lot of post-process elements inside of it. But because you're using Raymarching and because it's not really 3D, then you can get a lot of data. like this edge steps thing, like before we saw with the depth map. And then you can use those different elements inside of your normal TouchDesigner post process to create effects that are not just like an effect. It's not a post process effect. You're literally texturing a 3D scene with with reaction diffusion.
What you're seeing.
Yeah, instead of just like comping it in, or whatever, multiplying it, you're getting a lot more of the movement, of the shape, of the lighting, which is very powerful. Very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely. They've reached a certain point where I wanted to kind of push the looks of RayTK, further, just because I knew it was as simple as, just routing it back into itself. It's, using your completed RayTK scene as like, the foundation of pushing something like reaction diffusion. It's, it's just opening my brain to more possibilities by doing something like that, knowing that there's so much native stuff that I'm, looking over as far as, even in, this is looked over so much. There's so many things within this palette on the left here that's as silly as they are. It's like, yo, check out like, what was it? Push pins, I think it is.
Push pins.
Yeah, it's just like it creates like a those toys you push your hand through.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's just iterations of a simple image or whatever. But it's like stuff like that that's like built in. But and
then there's also the op snippets. A lot of the op snippets, like even the op snippets for feedback, are like right away the coolest feedback effects you can get, and you don't even have to. It's just literally copy paste. I love that about TouchDesigner, that they have these
their feedback edges.
Yeah, edge is the best. Can't get better.
It gets definitely a little chaotic, but right off the bat, it's pretty cool results as far as something
liquidy.
You're getting a little abstract with it, but
ooh, there we go. That's what we want. We want that fluidness.
Yeah, it's like you could set that to audio reactivity if you wanted to. Lots of cool options, just like in the palette alone, off the rip in TouchDesigner.
Well, Jesse, this has been. Oh, sorry. Continue.
Oh no, yeah. No, I was just gonna say, I was just bragging on the new bloom that TouchDesigner implemented. This bloom in the tops now is probably one of the better blooms I've seen. Yeah,
it's way better than the palette. I think, right? It's also way more optimized.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, you like this new bloom?
Yeah, definitely a lot more. It's a lot easier to control. It's like, you can. I mean, that's very blown out, but
nice. I'm embarrassed.
A little bit more controllable.
I'm embarrassed to say that my pro license expired a few months ago, and I'm still stuck in a few months old version. But it's the pro version. It's like $900 to get the yearly update. So it's like, and I'm totally like, everything's working for me. It's all good. I'm missing like a few of the new things that I'm like, fuck, I wish I had $900 to just buy it.
No, I know.
It'll come.
It's a commitment.
Yeah, and I have too many licenses. So it's like if I update one, I really have to update all of them. Otherwise, I'll be in like million versions of TouchDesigner, which I just can't do. Like, it's funny. Eric's desktop was like 7 different versions of TouchDesigner, and when I was talking to Tommy, he's like, "Oh, I have 20 versions of TouchDesigner installed." I'm like,
man.
I would lose my mind. I would lose my mind. Like, I don't want to have. I have 2 versions of Unreal. It's too much for me. Like, I just want to have the most recent one that works. Don't. Oh my goodness.
Oh man.
Anyway, I was going to say, Jesse, thank you so much for sharing with us your workflows. That set was amazing. And I'd love to jump into the end of our interview here and ask you a few more kind of questions about certain things. We kind of touched on it a little bit now, the flow state, but I'd love to talk to you about like kind of what the flow state is to you, kind of how you quote unquote access it. For me, it's not a, for me, it's like a blanket statement, you know, like a flow state could be very many different types of things. Where it reaches me the most, where I feel it the most, is when I'm in a show and the music is like perfect and perfect to my ears.
Yeah.
And I'm in a really good zone with it. And like, you know, if there's lighting guys and there's laser guys and maybe LED guys and or girls, sorry, then we're all kind of like jumping into it. And there's like a moment of like a soup, where there's like a soup of energy in the front of house, and you kind of just like are just like, you're not really thinking, your hands are just turning knobs and shit, and you're clicking stuff, and it's and the end result is always like very beautiful. So, but yeah, I mean, like, you know, what's a flow state for you? Kind of how do you attain it? What are some you know, experiences in that realm?
Yeah, so definitely flow state for me is finding that moment where you are in tune with what you're doing, as well as what you're doing is in tune with everything that's surrounding you. You know, I think, you know, I'll repeat this again and again. One of my goals in doing this is creating moments for people. And in doing that, I'm creating moments for myself where I'm remembering, you know, why I do this, you know, why I love this. And I think that in those moments where you're connected with the crowd and you're connected with the music, and you know what you're displaying art wise is, you know, perfectly syncopated with, you know, the motion and, you know, speed of everything that's going on. I think it's those really these moments that I, you know, I strive for, and I keep doing this because I'm trying to reach those moments of clarity. In a sense, it's a sense of kind of being zen with everything around you, and realizing that you're contributing to something more than yourself.
Hell yeah, beautifully said. Do you have any ways that you attain these moments, or are there certain things that you can do to be in them?
I think that really comes down to preparation. I think preparation is probably one of the biggest things, and being able to reach those moments is knowing that you're prepared, knowing that you have something that fits what's going to be performed. I think that having that and being comfortable in performing, you're going to be able to attain those moments a lot easier than flying on the edge of your seat, hoping that that moment aligns with what's going on around you.
I like that. So, comfort. So being comfortable, whatever that means to you, right? If comfort is having your set ready beforehand, if it's rehearsing, if it's maybe, you know, making sure that all your audio reactive stuff is set up so that you're comfortable moving to different things, or color palettes, like you said. I like that. The comfortness allows you to be more ready to get into those flow states, right? Because if you're anxious or something's not working the way that you expect it, you might have to be like more in your head to like problem solve or understand, or and it's actually, especially like if you're not prepared for the music, right? And you play something that, and this, excuse me, this happens to all of us. It's not like, you know, it doesn't mean anything about you personally. It's more of like just you don't know what music's always going to be, but sometimes the music could have a super abrupt change, right? And the visuals clash in some way with it, and that could create a discomforting moment, because you're like, now again, you're stuck in your head of like what you see and what you hear is conflicting.
Yeah, being ready for kind of any moment is a big part of, you know, being a VJ. I think that a lot of the times, you know, we're able to kind of check out and align with, you know, the people that we are performing for a lot of times, but that's not how it is for every VJ. There's a lot of VJs that perform all night, you know, for 6 different genres of artists, but it's like it comes with the territory, as far as being able to adapt as what's coming to you. And I think being prepared for anything is just the start of that.
For sure. and that kind of brings me to another place of like front of house. And I spoke about this a little bit with Matt with Zip Visuals about he actually brought it up, but about the front of house being an almost sacred space and almost a place where there's a lot of people working together to try and make something amazing, like what you keep on talking about, that those moments that people will remember forever and maybe change their lives. And it's not only you there, we're not DJs where it's just us in front of everybody. There's a team of people. It could be sound people, it could be lighting people, it might even be production people. There might even be pyrotechnics or smoke stuff, and there's so many things that could be happening in terms of the production outside of the visuals, and usually they're all collected in the front of house. Keeping your cool, keeping your not clarity, but your
composure.
Your composure, thank you.
Yeah.
Is super important, right? Coming into that space with negativity or coming into that space with anxiety can affect the people around you. What's been your experience with this?
So, I mean, I think I am guilty definitely of letting my emotions get to me, especially in like heated moments like that. But it's something that any person, I think, needs to be able to experience and go through, because that's how you learn to problem solve better. It's, having those heated moments where, you're, kind of, trying to juggle being human as well as kind of keeping a cool head and kind of, trying to fix the problem at hand. I think that, it's difficult. It's easy to say, difficult to do, especially in, we want peak performance out of, a lot of times we're going into something and we want, to be able to do our best and put out our best performance. So when something like that interferes, we're definitely, frustrated by it. It's hard not to sometimes.
Yeah, it's definitely hard not to. We're all, guilty is a strong word, but we're all susceptible to emotions, and there's a lot of anxiety when you go perform a show, especially if you have 1 hour, especially if you have one set and that's it. That's your 1 hour. Maybe the person before you did the best set ever, and now you're like, the pressure's on. Maybe the person after you is like your idol, and you're like, oh, I have to impress them. Maybe your hot girlfriend or girl that you want to impress is there. It's like there's so many things, and I think you said it really beautifully of like, these are growing experiences, right? Of like things that you can learn from, and I've definitely been in front of house, the angry asshole that's yelling at everybody, and but it's like, because I'm nervous about what I'm doing, so then it's like I don't know how to express myself other than do this, do that, do this, instead of like looking at myself and like, I need to do this and that. But I think it's normal in life, right? Man. Learning experiences, yeah. I wish I can, like now I really take a lot of, cause there's other people involved, then it's always like, for me, when there's another person involved that I might affect negatively, then it like turns a switch on in my head a little bit, so I'm more aware of it. So, I really try like to like not do that in front of house. And if I have, something that's bothering me, I'll try and go and come back. If only I could apply
definitely
that to my life.
Separating yourself. Yep.
I could apply it to my everyday life with my family and friends. That would be great. I have to just walk around with a big soundboard and a tent everywhere I go.
Oh my gosh.
Everywhere will be a front of house.
Front of house everywhere.
Speaking about emotions and feelings, abstract art is a very esoteric, abstract thing. Where does the emotion hit you in abstract art? What are the kind of quote unquote tips and or not tips what are the kind of things that you do in your art to create emotion through abstraction?
I think a lot of it has to do with motion, as far as the speed of motion, how objects are interacting, and it really does come down to the color palette of things. I think that certain colors definitely bring out more emotion, and especially trying to align it with certain types of music, having cooler colors with cooler songs, as far as like the tempo of things. One just big focus has just been motion, like the patch I was working on earlier. It's kind of more of a undulating focus on like a portal spiral. So really trying to create those different looks, and kind of throw the eye off as far as optical illusions, and create something original out of that, because the whole fun of abstract is it doesn't have to look like anything, but it has to look like something. Yeah, so
It has to feel like something.
line. Yeah, it has to feel like something, and it doesn't have to look like anything, I guess, is the best way to describe it. But
do you have a certain emotion in mind when you're creating stuff, or is it more of like the creation and experimentation creates an emotion?
Yeah, I think in experimentation, I'm creating these feelings. It's like some patches I make me feel absolutely giddy, and then some of them make me want to go rage and like freaking dance somewhere. But it really just varies on how I'm feeling in the moment creating it as well, and what emotions I'm pouring into it is kind of what comes out of it as well. I think if I'm angry and I make like a metallic kind of like darker black metal kind of thing, it's like it's because I was feeling maybe spicy that day. It's like but I don't want to elicit that anger out of anybody, but it's the emotion that goes into it. Will definitely pull something out of it, at least.
Of course. And we can't, anger is an emotion. You can't suppress anger. It's not healthy. You just have to transmute it in a good way and hopefully not hurt anybody along the way or yourself. So do you use art as a form of therapy, as a form of, like for instance, if you are angry and you go and sit down, maybe the end result of the product that you're making or the creation that you're making is quote unquote has an angry emotion or, transmuted emotion. And again, emotions are not negative or positive. They just are. But does that help you release that anger in a transmuted way? Does it create some sort of calm inside of you?
I think, subconsciously it definitely does. I don't think that's kind of my main focus. If I'm, angry, I think it's really just more so to get my mind off whatever I'm kind of dwelling on. But then in turn, it is therapeutic because I, without knowing, got my mind off of whatever I was worried about for, X amount of time while I was, diving deep in nodes, you know what I mean? So
of course.
It definitely is an escape without even me knowing consciously.
Yeah. And it's a healthy escape, right? It's not, and again, no judgment to what people do and how they deal with anything, but some things are objectively good and some things are objectively not good. And sitting on the computer to escape a difficult moment or a difficult situation is going to be way better than, doing substances or any type of form of external addictions or things like that. Because, sitting on the computer is an addiction. I could tell you I'm fully addicted to sitting on the computer. But it's the ramifications are a lot different than other things. For me, it's like I used to use it a lot more as a tool of therapy. Like if I was in an emotional state, then I would be like, okay, fuck it. I'm just going to go sit on the computer and open up some software and see how I can, reduce the stress or reduce the anxiety or reduce the pain or whatever. I think as I got older, it kind of stopped working like that. And I also noticed that like you were saying, like the results of what I was making were kind of, it's not that they were useless, but they were fueled in a very different way. And I think it's different for like pain, because I think that there is some like there is something to that. But definitely when I was like a lot younger and anxious and I would go and sit at the computer and make things, I always found that the results were inducing anxiety. It's almost like the transmutation was literally like forging my anxiety into some imagery,
Yeah.
instead of like, okay, releasing it in something else. Yeah, I just find it interesting. Like, as I got older, that kind of stopped working as well, and now I have to use other forms of escape to, hopefully I choose the healthy versions. But I just find that interesting.
It's a constant battle, but
It's a constant battle.
that's what we all struggle with.
Yeah, and it's like, abstract art is like it's such a abstract thing. It's very subjective, I feel. I feel like, yeah, you can have floating, noise patterns and reaction diffusion and, crazy shapes and things, but it's like, it's not really like there's some things that are synonymous. Some iconography is like objective, like everybody kind of relates to it the same way, and colors for sure. I think that there's like a pretty strong science behind like colors and how they make us feel. But I think a lot of the abstraction is really the intention. It's like, what is my, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the intention when you created it. I think it's the intention when you're performing it, when you're, literally in the moment showing it to people. I think that people really relate to that on a very subconscious level. In the same way that if I put like a beautiful, woman figure, then I would have this sense of, motherhood and security and, whatever that elicits. Or if I put like I use a lot of Merkabas in my visuals. And for me, they always create stability and focus and like a sort of reset to the mind, like a instant, like, oh, okay, I'm here, like
Grounding,
present, grounding, exactly. But with abstract, it's like really like there isn't a message per se, right? It's really like, what is my intention?
A lot of it's just up to interpretation. There's no kind of center focused model or kind of like theme of it, so it's really kind of up to your eye and your mind to make up the theme of it.
Do you ever like worry about that, worry, quote unquote, worry about that when you create art, like that your message is lost in the abstraction, or that you're not you're not enforcing a message onto people in that sense?
Not at all. I think that one of the most beautiful parts of art is that it's interpreted different by every single next person over. It's
Beautiful.
I can ask one friend what this makes them think, and then I'll ask the next friend completely different answers. So I think of the having a message be lost in that it's not really a concern of me, more than making people think, no matter what it makes them think. If they think like, oh, this looks like goop, or like, what I mean? It's like, this is a cool tunnel, like, or whatever. It's making them, think more than they would, staring at absolutely nothing. You know what I mean? It's whatever it triggers in the mind, I'm happy with. I don't really care if they get what I originally intended to put in it. It's more so just making people think. I think is really kind of what the bottom line is whatever their opinion is of it, it's eliciting thought and inspiration, and whatever I can do throughout my art, I'm gonna try to do that.
Hell yeah. Sorry, my doggy just entered here.
You're good.
That's awesome. I think I really relate to that. I think that's like a really potent anecdote about like, not putting too much thought into the creation process of just like I'm creating, this looks cool to me, this feels good to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to play it, and then the people are going to take that and they're going to feel whatever they're feeling. They're going to get whatever they're getting. Like that's a very abstract way of thinking. Just as a last thing here, before we let you go, where do you get your inspiration from? Kind of what fuels your, I was talking before as a joke, like, addiction to computers. Unfortunately, computers are used for a lot of things except for art. So, my addiction of sitting on the computer is 70% not making art. You know what I mean? Like, what are things that, that you do or create inside of you that focus you to make things and create things? What inspires you?
I just generally have an urge to keep going. I just find myself just opening my computer some days with no clear intention other than I'm going to try something new. And I really want to push myself to my own limits, especially diving into something like TouchDesigner, which, from the outside, a lot of people are intimidated, and I want to take that intimidation and spin it on myself to learn as much as I can about the program. And, I know I'm going to find myself venturing out into other programs, but, I feel like that this is having this foundation of an infinite sandbox to be able to create is kind of what's pushing me to just keep diving further, keep making more looks I haven't, done before. I want to surprise myself mostly. I want to surprise myself and others is kind of what it comes down to, is the constant creative urge is really what keeps me going, as well as surprising myself and others.
I love that. Surprising yourself and others. That's very potent. I think that you managed to do that really well.
Thank you. Appreciate you, brother.
As much as your stuff is abstract and as much as your stuff is gobbledygloop, whatever, there's always something surprising and interesting about it. And I feel like that's a really nice. It's nice to hear that from you. That's kind of your goal as well.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
So Jesse, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
It was a long drawn out process. We had to do it in 2 pieces, but we managed to do it.
Hey, we did it.
We did it, and it was really great. And thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a great episode. So nice to talk with Jesse. He's such a beautiful, authentic, and unique person. Thank you to Mad to Smash for the intro and outro music. Thank you to Widge for providing us music for the set. And of course, thank you, Jesse, for taking the time to sit with us. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share with anybody you think will enjoy. Really helps us with the algorithm and gets our podcast in front of more people. Next week, we have an awesome guest on the show. Let's just say he's kind of weird. See you next week.